Hey everyone, and welcome to a deep dive.
hmm
Today we're going to unpack why and how our voices change as we grow.
Yeah, it's something we all go through, but
It's pretty wild when you think about it, right?
it is.
I mean, like one day you're this little kid with a squeaky voice, and the next you sound like, Barry White.
Exactly. And we've got a video transcript all about it.
Okay, so spill the tea. What's the science behind all of this?
Well, it starts with those two bands of muscle tissue we call vocal cords.
Ah, yes, the vocal
They're
cords.
in your
Right,
larynx,
the larynx.
which sits between your tongue and your windpipe.
That's the voice box, right?
Yeah, and they vibrate to make sound. It's wild to think about
It is.
our own little instruments right there in our throats.
Okay, so we've got the vocal cords in the larynx making the sound. But what about the high-pitched voices in little kids?
Right. So a child's larynx is smaller proportionally,
Makes sense.
and their vocal cords are shorter too.
So like a tiny instrument.
Yeah. And shorter cords vibrate faster.
Ah, so that's why they have that higher pitch.
Yeah. Exactly. As the larynx grows, the pitch naturally lowers.
So then puberty hits, and it's like voice cracks galore.
Oh, yeah.
I remember those days vividly.
Yeah, for everyone, right?
So what's happening in our bodies during puberty to make all that happen?
Hormones, a surge of them. It causes rapid growth, not just in height, but the larynx and those vocal cords too.
Uh-huh.
They get longer and thicker, leading to a lower pitch.
Okay, and it's more noticeable in boys, right?
Yeah, much more.
Because of testosterone.
It's because of the way their larynx grows.
Okay, so the larynx grows and the vocal cords change.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Great.
But the transcript also mentioned something about facial bones and resonance. What's that about?
Oh, yeah. That's fascinating. So as facial bones develop, especially around the nasal cavity, they create these larger spaces.
Oh, interesting.
They're like resonating chambers, amplifying and enriching the sound from the vocal cords.
Wow, so our face shape actually impacts how our voice sounds.
It's like the difference between a violin and a cello.
A bigger instrument, deeper sound.
Exactly.
So while my voice was cracking, my face was changing shape too. No wonder those teenage years were so awkward.
I think we've all been there.
Yeah, definitely a universal experience.
And the transcript says these changes usually happen between 11 and 15, but it varies depending on when puberty starts.
That's different for everyone.
But here's a fun fact. The full maturation of your voice can actually continue into your 20s.
You're kidding?
No.
I had no idea it took that long for our voices to fully mature.
Yeah, it's a gradual process.
So speaking of changes, what about the Adam's apple?
Okay.
That's in the transcript too. What is that exactly?
The Adam's apple is the front part of the larynx, the thyroid cartilage.
Okay.
During puberty, as the larynx grows and tilts forward, this cartilage sticks out more.
I see.
It's way more noticeable in males because their larynxes grow much larger on average.
Ah, so it's all about the size of the larynx.
Yep.
Which makes sense if you think about it, because we were just talking about how larynx size affects pitch.
Exactly.
Some people are just predisposed to have deeper voices than others. It's like they're born with a larger instrument, right?
Precisely. Larger larynx, longer vocal cords, deeper voice.
Those singers who can hit notes I can only dream of.
Right.
It's fascinating how much anatomy plays a role in all of this.
It really is. And it's not just the starting point either.
No, what do you mean?
Everyone experiences these changes, but the timeline and the intensity vary a lot.
Ah, so some people's voices might change gradually and others more rapidly.
Exactly. It's all part of what makes our voices so unique.
That's a great point. And speaking of unique, we've been focusing on the physical stuff, but what about the emotional side of things?
Oh, yeah, totally. The transcript does mention some of those feelings of awkwardness, especially for teenagers.
Totally makes sense.
I mean, your voice is changing. It's like this core part of your identity.
Right, and how you express yourself.
Exactly. And it's changing in ways you can't always control.
No kidding. It's like your body's betraying you a little bit with all these weird squeaks and cracks.
Yeah, and teenagers are already dealing with so much self-awareness and insecurity.
Big.
So it's a lot to handle. But the transcript really emphasizes that these changes are completely normal.
Yeah, of course.
It's just the larynx adjusting to its new size and shape.
It's like a growth spurt for your voice.
Exactly. And it's usually temporary,
Thank goodness.
right? It usually only lasts a few months.
So hang in there, teenagers.
Mm-hmm.
Your voice will settle down eventually.
It will. You're not alone. Everyone goes through this, just at their own pace.
That's reassuring to hear.
And it's important to remember that everyone's experience is unique.
Okay, so we've talked about the physical changes and the emotional roller coaster. But what about the social impact?
Right, how people perceive us.
Yeah, exactly. Does the transcript delve into that at all?
It does. It points out that deeper voices are often associated with maturity and authority.
especially for males,
Right. And even attractiveness in some cultures.
whereas higher voices are linked to youthfulness.
And sometimes even submissiveness.
Wow, so our voices can actually influence how people see us and treat us.
Exactly. It adds another layer of complexity to the whole experience.
It's like our voices become social signifiers, sending messages about who we are before we've even spoken a word.
Precisely. And it makes you think about the power dynamics that can be embedded in something as simple as vocal pitch.
That's a really fascinating point. It's not just about how we feel about our own voices, but also how others perceive them and how those perceptions can shape our interactions.
Absolutely. It's like this hidden language that we're all speaking and interpreting without even realizing it.
This is making me think about those times when we try to consciously change our voices,
Oh,
like on the phone or giving a presentation.
right.
Are we trying to project a certain image or fit into those societal expectations we were just talking about?
That's a great question. And it highlights how adaptable our voices can be. We might deepen our voice to sound more authoritative,
Mhm.
or soften it to appear more approachable, or even mimic accents to fit in with a certain group.
Wow, it's like our voices are constantly evolving and adapting, not just as we grow, but also in response to our social environment and the roles we play.
Exactly. It's a fascinating interplay between biology, psychology, and social dynamics.
And that brings us to another fascinating aspect, the impact of emotions.
Right? How our feelings affect our voices.
Yeah. The transcript mentioned how stress or nervousness can make our voices shake or crack,
Uh-huh.
but there's a whole world of research on how our emotional state is reflected in our vocal patterns,
Absolutely. Think about how someone's voice gets higher when they're excited.
or how we can tell if someone's upset just by the tone of their voice.
It's like our voice is this window into our inner world, revealing emotions we might not even be aware of.
Exactly. And think about the nuances we can detect in a loved one's voice.
Right.
How a slight change in inflection can convey a world of meaning.
Without even saying a word.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Or how a skilled actor can use their voice to portray a whole range of emotions.
From joy and sorrow to anger and fear.
It really makes you realize that the human voice is so much more than just a tool for communication. It's an incredibly expressive instrument, capable of conveying a whole symphony of emotions, intentions, and desires.
Beautifully said. And it brings us to a key question. If our voices are so intertwined with our identity and emotions, what happens when something disrupts that balance?
Okay, I'm intrigued. What kind of things are we talking about here?
Well, imagine experiencing a voice disorder
Oh, wow.
or undergoing a medical procedure that affects your vocal cords.
That would be tough.
Imagine losing the ability to speak.
Or having your voice change dramatically due to illness or injury.
It can be incredibly disorienting and isolating.
I can only imagine. It really highlights how much we rely on our voices for connection and self-expression.
Absolutely. It's a powerful reminder to not take our voices for granted.
Yeah, we often assume that our ability to speak and sing is a given, but it's actually a complex and delicate mechanism.
That can be affected by so many things, both physical and emotional.
This deep dive has definitely made me appreciate the complexity and the vulnerability of the human voice. It's so much more than just a sound we make. It's an integral part of who we are, how we interact with the world, and how we connect with others.
You've put it perfectly. And as we wrap up this part of our exploration, I want to leave you with this thought.
Okay, I'm listening.
Given what we've learned about the interconnectedness of voice identity and emotion, how might we cultivate a deeper understanding and appreciation for the unique voices that surround us? Maybe by listening more attentively,
Yeah,
being more mindful of the messages our own voices convey,
right.
and by celebrating the incredible diversity of human expression.
That's a beautiful thought. I love that.
It's something to ponder as
Uh,
we continue our exploration.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's like suddenly the way you sound doesn't match how you feel inside.
Right.
The transcript mentioned voice cracks and feeling out of control.
Right.
Did it touch on any other emotional aspects?
Yeah, it highlighted how some people might feel tense or self-conscious,
Oh, yeah, for sure.
especially in social situations.
Totally.
Imagine giving a presentation and your voice just squeaks out.
Oh, God, the worst nightmare.
Right. It can be so unsettling, embarrassing even.
Especially for teenagers who are already hyper-aware of everything.
Exactly. But the transcript reminds us that it's crucial to remember these changes are normal.
Of course.
It's a natural part of development.
Yeah, just part of growing up.
Your larynx is just adjusting to its new size and shape. That's all.
It's like a growth spurt, but for your voice.
Exactly. And that squeaky phase, even though it might feel like forever,
Oh, it does.
it's usually temporary.
Okay, that's good to know.
Just a few months, usually.
So there's hope for all the squeaky teenagers out there.
There is. The key is to remember you're not alone. Everyone goes through this.
That's a good point.
Even if the changes aren't super noticeable for some people.
Okay, so our voices are tied to our identity, and they're going through these changes. What about the social impact of all of this?
Interesting question.
Does the transcript talk about that?
It does. It mentions how deeper voices, especially for males,
Uh-huh.
are often associated with maturity, authority, even attractiveness in some cultures.
Interesting.
But then higher voices.
They're usually linked to usefulness, right?
Yeah, and sometimes even submissiveness.
So our voices can actually affect how people perceive us and treat us.
Exactly. And it adds this whole other layer to the experience.
It's like our voices become these social cues, sending messages about who we are before we've even said a word.
Exactly. And it makes you think about the power dynamics involved.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
It's not just about how we feel about our own voices, but also how others perceive them and how those perceptions shape our interactions.
Absolutely. It's like this hidden language we're all speaking and interpreting without even realizing it.
Wow, that's deep.
It is.
And it makes me wonder about those times when we try to consciously change our voices,
Like when you're talking.
like on the phone or
Right.
giving a presentation.
Exactly.
Are we trying to fit into those societal expectations we were just talking about?
It's possible. Maybe we're trying to project a certain image.
Yeah.
Like deepening our voice to sound more authoritative
Right.
or softening it to seem more approachable.
Right.
Some people even mimic accents to fit in.
It's incredible how adaptable our voices can be.
It really is. Our voices are always evolving and adapting.
Not just as we physically grow, but also in response to our social environment.
And the roles we play in different situations.
It's this fascinating mix of biology, psychology, and social dynamics all rolled into one.
Exactly.
And speaking of fascinating, what about the impact of emotions?
Oh, yeah. How our feelings color our voices.
The transcript mentions stress and nervousness.
Uh-huh. Making our voices shake or crack.
Right.
But there's so much research on how our emotional state is reflected in our vocal pattern.
It's true. You can tell a lot about how someone's feeling just by listening to their voice.
Absolutely. Like when someone's voice gets all high-pitched when they're excited.
Or when their tone changes when they're upset.
Exactly. It's like our voice is this window into our inner world, revealing emotions we might not even be conscious of.
Think about the nuances in a loved one's voice.
Right.
A slight change in inflection can speak volumes.
Without saying a single word.
Or how a skilled actor can use their voice to portray a whole spectrum of emotions.
From joy and sorrow to anger and fear, just with their voice.
It really is amazing.
Yeah.
The human voice is so much more than just a way to communicate. It's an instrument of expression, capable of conveying a whole symphony of emotions, intentions, desires.
Beautifully said. And it raises an important question. What happens when something disrupts the delicate balance between voice, identity, and emotion?
Okay, I'm listening.
Imagine experiencing a voice disorder
Oh, wow.
or having to undergo a medical procedure that affects your vocal cords.
That would be scary.
Imagine losing your ability to speak.
Or having your voice change drastically because of illness or injury.
It can be a really difficult experience, disorienting and isolating.
I can only imagine. It makes you realize how much we take our voices for granted.
We do. We assume we'll always be able to speak and sing, but it's a complex and delicate mechanism,
That can be affected by so many things.
both physical and emotional.
This deep dive has definitely given me a new appreciation for the human voice. It's so much more than just a sound. It's a part of who we are, how we connect with the world and with each other.
Yeah, it really is amazing. It makes you think about how much information is packed into our voices.
Yeah, that's true.
We've talked about all these changes, the emotional side, the social perceptions. Is there anything else from the transcript that stuck out to you?
Yeah, actually, the transcript mentions the diversity of voices.
Ah, right.
We've focused on puberty, but there's so much variation out there.
Of course.
Some people naturally have deeper voices.
Regardless of gender.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Some keep a youthful sound, even as adults.
Right. And then there are those who use their voices in extraordinary ways. Singers, actors, voiceover artists.
Yes, they can manipulate pitch, tone, timbre.
Yeah.
It's incredible.
It's like their voices are superpowers.
Seriously. It's a true art form.
Speaking of art forms, what about voice acting?
Oh, man.
I'm always blown away by how they create those distinct characters.
It's incredible, right?
Just using their voice.
It's like they become different people.
They have to understand not only how to produce the sound, but also the emotions.
And the physicality of the character.
Exactly. They're creating a whole world with just their voice.
It makes you realize how much we can learn about someone just by listening.
Oh, absolutely.
Their accent, their cadence, their tone, it all tells a story.
And then there's language itself.
Right.
How different sounds convey different meanings.
It's mind-boggling when you think about it.
The transcript doesn't go deep into linguistics, but it's another layer to consider.
Yeah, for sure.
The sounds we use are shaped by our culture,
Our geography,
our history. It's like our voices carry echoes of the past.
connecting us to something bigger.
Exactly.
And it's not just spoken language either.
Right, music, singing.
We were talking about how a larger instrument creates a deeper sound.
Yeah.
But singers can do so much more than that. How do they train to use their voices like that?
It's talent and dedication. They learn to control their breath, to manipulate resonance, to hit those high notes with power and precision.
It's like they're pushing the boundaries of what's possible.
They are. And it's not just technical skill.
There's the emotion, too.
Exactly. The feeling they pour into their singing.
A singer can express so much emotion just through their voice.
Joy, sorrow, longing, despair.
It's powerful stuff.
It really is. It goes beyond language. It connects with us on a deeper level.
Whether it's a lullaby or an opera aria.
Music touches us in ways that words can't.
It's like the voice becomes a bridge to something bigger than ourselves.
To shared emotions, universal experiences.
Maybe even spiritual realms.
Exactly. It's profound.
We talked about voice and social perceptions. Does the transcript say anything about identity beyond gender?
It doesn't go into specifics, but it stresses the importance of celebrating diversity.
And that diversity goes beyond just pitch and tone.
Of course. Think about how our voices reflect our culture,
Our dialect.
our personalities. All these things contribute to human expression.
It's like our voices are constantly changing and adapting.
Not just as we grow, but as we interact with the world and shape our identities.
In a world that tries to put us in boxes, it's so important to celebrate those differences.
Absolutely. Those unique voices are what make us who we are.
And it all comes back to that point from the transcript.
About the shared human experience.
Right. The journey is different for everyone.
But we all go through this transformation.
It's a reminder that we're all connected.
That we all have a story to tell.
And our voices are how we share those stories.
Beautifully said. So as we wrap up this deep dive,
What's the one thing our listeners should take away today?
your voice is a powerful and precious gift.
It is.
It's how you communicate. It's a reflection of who you are. It's an instrument of creativity.
Embrace its uniqueness. Celebrate its diversity.
And never stop exploring the power within your own voice.
Beautifully said. Thanks for joining us on the deep dive, everyone.